Welcome back, Raider Nation. It's time for another edition of Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast, also heard on the radio, 101.5 KDAWN and 840 KXNT in Las Vegas. Welcome to all of you coming back here. We're talking Raiders football. It's been a tough week. I understand that, but I am here with you, Scott Branson, your host, along with my co-host, Mr. Moton. Mo's a senior NFL writer at Bleacher Report. If you're not reading his stuff, what is wrong with you? Go to the doctor, find out, go to a psychologist. Why aren't you reading Mo on Bleacher Report? They'll tell you it's because you're crazy. So go check out Mo's work up there. You can also check out his Raiders work on sportsnot.com. You can follow him on x.com at Moton, Moemoton. I am at LV Gully. The show is SNB Today. Mo, another rough week for Raider Nation. A lot of people stewing it. We're going to get to a bunch of calls. We're going to devote a lot of the show to callers. We had a bunch of calls, obviously, on Tuesday. We also had a bunch of calls on the post game as I had the video drop-ins, which was great. Really enjoyed that as well. Shout out to our buddy Murph, still recovering from the car accident that he was in. He'll be back on Sunday, hopefully. I think he will be, but we'll check in with him soon to find out for sure. So make sure you do that. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your audio. Also on video, hit the subscribe button, the like, the thumbs up, and the notifications bell. All right, Mo, things continue to go in strange directions. I said on Tuesday here, my friend, that the Raiders are in a state of dysfunction and denial. I had some people take issue with the dysfunction piece, but you start to see the reporting. I saw Mike Sando, the great writer over at The Athletic, who does his bottom six, and he talked about the Raiders being one of the most miserable teams in the league. I want to touch on this because a lot of this focuses on Pete Carroll. I was critical. I wrote a piece up on SportsNot on Monday on Tuesday about Pete Carroll and his inability to get over his loyalty to Geno Smith. Just want to point this out because we talked a lot over the last couple of years, Mo, about Josh McDaniels, Antonio Pierce, and big losses. When the Raiders lose, they it's not like they're losing squeakers. They're not losing 1, 2, 3 point games where you say, hey, it just goes the other way, but they're close. Josh McDaniels lost 16% of his games as Raiders coach by 17 plus points. Antonio Pierce lost 17 plus. Of course, he was only coach for a little over a year and a half. That's 7.7% of his games you would consider blowouts. Pete Carroll, in just 5 games, Mo, has lost 2 by 17 plus. That's 40%. I'm focusing on Pete Carroll. Yes, there's issues with the roster, John Spytek, all of that. He just got there. We understand that. But my question to you is, when you look at the situation that the Raiders are in the 2025 season, there is organizational things, and we'll get into that. But Pete Carroll, to me, has to shoulder a lot of this because it's not working, Mo. It's not working, and he refuses to change the approach. Tell me how you see it.
I wrote after the loss, the 4-6 loss to the Colts, that the biggest loser in that game over at, I wrote this at Bleacher Report, is Pete Carroll because he should be embarrassed by his football team. And a lot of people like to say, well, who is to blame? Is it the coaches or is it the players? When players make poor decisions on the field, quarterback throwing interceptions, Geno Smith, you blame that on the player. When a team looks totally unprepared in all 3 phases, that's when you start looking at the coaching staff. And we've seen now 2 instances, one against the Commanders, one against the Colts, where the Raiders are just inept in all 3 phases of the game. And it's surprising to see that from a Pete Carroll coach team because you think with a veteran head coach and his resume, you shouldn't have teams that are unprepared. I don't care if you're going from West to East Coast time zone, you're playing on the moon, whatever the case may be, Pete Carroll's teams are prepared to at least play football and be competitive. And the fact that the Raiders have not even been competitive for 2 of their last 3 games is concerning. So when I look at this and I say, how much of this is on Pete Carroll and his inability, his inflexibility and being too rigid. Yeah, he could bench Geno Smith or Kenny Pickett, and we could talk about that. But at the end of the day, it's, for me, like you just said, it's the inability to change certain things. It's not just Geno Smith in the quarterback position. It's not just JPJ in the offensive line. I talked about this on Bleacher Report. Josh Blackwell, who blocked the field goal in that Chicago Bear game, said that he got the tip on the Raiders because Jacob Moyer moves the ball before the snap, right? He said this to reporters, and Pete Carroll dismissed it. What happened the following week? What happened last Sunday, Scott? The Colts blocked the punt. A.J. Cole gets hurt on the play. So obviously there's something going on with the Raiders special teams unit that's giving opposing teams the jump. And the Raiders not paying attention to this. And players are outwardly publicly saying what's wrong. And for Pete Carroll to dismiss it, to me, shows that he's just too rigid and too stuck in his ways to make the changes or admit that, they're doing something wrong and they need to change it.
Yeah. And listen, I've had a lot of interactions over the past several days with very optimistic Raider fans. And I love that. I love people out there, especially in the cesspool that is social media. When you come across somebody who's looking at the positive, the glass half full point of view, I can appreciate that. And I have a lot of love for that. Our good friend, I'm going to point her out, not to pick on her because we love her, but our good friend, Just Win Wendy, who's also on our fantasy football league, tweeted out, hey, even though podcast hosts, I don't think she was talking about us per se, but she was just saying in general, talking about the Raiders being dysfunctional. It's not true, blah, blah, patience, this and that. And I disagreed with her. I said, no, dysfunction is when your team is not prepared. When your team is not prepared after 2 weeks in a row, you said 2 weeks ago, we had a championship week like practice week. Okay. Last week, Pete Carroll tells the broadcast team on Fox, we are so close. We just need a couple more things. I can feel it. We're so close to breaking this thing open. And then they come out and lay an egg against Indianapolis. That is dysfunction. To your point, if a team comes out and is not prepared. Now, listen, I think people forget because you and I are being critical, which we should be because it's that bad. They forget that you and I didn't expect a lot out of this team. I was 1 win higher than you picked 7. I picked 8. I said, great progress would be doubling your wins. That would be massive, massive progress for this Raiders team. But I keep seeing some people, especially the optimistic ones, hey, Pete started in Seattle. They were tough. They didn't have a great first year. Hey, at USC, which I don't think it's really comparable, but nonetheless, Pete Carroll has started slow in other stops. And I get that. I know what they're saying. But I have what I call the problem with patience. And that is I have patience. And as someone who covers the team, Mo, I'm okay with them losing. Again, I didn't think that they were going to come out and win 10, 11 games like a lot of fans believed. That was never in my thought process, nor did I think that was going to come to fruition. But what I expected, especially because I got a lot of respect and still do for Pete Carroll. I know a lot of people want to make fun of his age, which I think is BS, but nonetheless, the rigidity, which is what you just talked about, is absolutely the thing here. And I expected my biggest expectation of this Raiders team, even though they said, well, we're doing it to win now. Yeah, I get that. That's just being positive, trying to keep your players on that side of things. But what I expected was clean football. Yes, you get beat because of talent. Yes, you get beat sometimes because of execution, because of that talent. But what I did not expect was the sloppiness. And what I did not expect was Geno Smith to be the worst. And he is, don't get it wrong, he is the worst quarterback in the NFL right now. Absolutely, hands down. So when you look at that, Mo, for me, the problem of patience, you can be patient if you see progress. We haven't seen any progress.
We talked about it last week. Seems like they're regressing.
Exactly.
We went from winning the opener on the road in New England. New England looks good, by the way, but right now.
Yes, they do.
Buffalo. They go on the road, beat New England, and then after that, they lay the egg on Monday Night Football against the Chargers. They get blown off the field by the Commanders, who have a backup quarterback in Marcus Mariota and for Jayden Daniels. It wasn't even the Jayden Daniels-led team. They lose to the Bears on a blocked field goal, as I just talked about, and the Bears didn't look good in that game either. It's like the Bears were buttoned up and their offense looked great. They struggled as well. It's just the Raiders struggled more and they allowed that blocked field goal. Then they get blown out again by the Colts. And the Colts are, don't get me wrong, the Colts are exceeding early expectations. No one had them at 4-1 right now.
Right.
But the Colts aren't the 2000, the greatest show on turf, 1999, Los Angeles, then St. Louis Rams.
Yeah.
They are not the greatest show on turf. They scored 40 on the Raiders defense, Scott. Jonathan Taylor had 3 rushing touchdowns. The Raiders didn't score a touchdown in a game for the second time this season. Did not score a touchdown. I'll repeat that. Twice this season already, the Raiders have not scored a touchdown. Remember when we used to talk about Antonio Pierce's led teams, what the goal is to score for 20 points? How is it that we went from that to, with Pete Carroll, the goal is to just score a touchdown? Scoring a touchdown is a chore for the Raiders with a veteran quarterback, a Chip Kelly, and a running back, Ashton Jeter, who we both think could be great. The wide receiver core is young, yes, but they still got Jacoby Myers. I understand Brock Bowers wasn't out there. Michael Mayer wasn't out there. I get all of that stuff. But if you watch the game back, there's so many throws that Geno Smith left on the field, so many yards and touchdowns that Geno Smith left on the field, and they continuously, and this has been a perpetual problem with the Raiders, they continuously get to the red zone, and it's like they forget what to do with the football. Yeah. They cannot score in the red zone. I had a tweet that blew up on Sunday. Avoid people that hate you as much as the Raiders hate scoring in the red zone. And people thought it was hilarious, but for whatever reason, it's not just the Geno Smith, Pete Carroll era. It's been going on for decades now. They get to the red zone and they stall and they settle for 3 instead of scoring 6, and it's been a big problem.
Yes, and you talked about the Bear game because a lot of people use that against my argument, saying, well, that Bear thing, if they don't block the kick, doesn't matter. You failed on special teams. You're failing in all 3 phases of the game. And not only that, but Geno Smith gave the Bears, he gave up 14 points on those 2 interceptions, which the Bears scored touchdown. See, when you create turnovers, it gives you the opportunity to capitalize and score points. And the Raiders, for the first time in 40 games, didn't get a sack last week. They're not creating turnovers. Defensive backfield, the problem we thought would show its ugly head has shown its ugly head. Caillou Blue-Kelly, one of the worst cornerbacks in the league when it comes to coverage and giving up receptions and yardage. It's just not working. I'm not picking on the player, but that's where the depth comes in. Then you factor in, Mo, the Raiders' injuries are piling up. Okay. And so you already have a thin team. So we knew if the and injuries are part of the game, they're going to happen. No team goes unscathed during the season. But when you're as thin as you are, that's fine. So then, again, I focused on this on Tuesday, which is you have that Colts game. It's out of hand. And Pete Carroll keeps sending Geno Smith out there. Now, again, I'm not saying Kenny Pickett's going to come in and lead the major comeback and they're going to beat the Colts. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying Kenny Pickett necessarily is the guy for long-term in Las Vegas, because he's not. But he's a 500 quarterback who doesn't turn the ball over. You and I talked about that last week. So at that point, your team needs a spark. They just need some positivity. They need some positive momentum, even if they're still going to lose. And Pete Carroll doubles down. Then Monday's press conference, this blew my mind, my friend. They asked him, so how would you assess Geno Smith's performance on Sunday? Simple question, open-ended question. And he said, I thought G did okay. I think that it's like, whoa. Now, don't get me wrong, right, Mo? You don't expect a coach to go up and say, he was terrible, he sucks. No. We say, listen, Geno's struggling. And here's how I would have answered it. If I'm transparent and I'm living in reality. And that is, look, Geno struggled. We know what Geno can do. We still think when Geno's at his best, he gives us the best chance to win. But he's got a lot to work on. He's going to do that. He's a veteran. He's going to get right. We got to give him some time to do that. Okay, fine. Say that. But he doubled down again.
So her Twitter name is Dana OG. I want to shout her out. DAYNAOG. She replied to one of my posts, and she said this. And she's a Seahawks fan. She's not a Raider fan.
Mm-hmm.
She is a Seahawks fan through and through. So she's sat through the entire Pete Carroll era with the Seahawks. And she said this. This is not me. She said, Pete Carroll is loyal, but sometimes to a fault. And this is, I think we're at that point early in the season where he's loyal to a fault. We all know about his pre-existing relationship with Geno Smith in Seattle and how Geno Smith resurrected his career into Pete Carroll. And I'm sure those two talk about that all the time. And Geno Smith is grateful for it, and Pete Carroll is grateful for Geno Smith and his play in Seattle. Geno Smith, 2-time Pro Bowl with the Seahawks. But this is not 2-time Pro Bowl Geno Smith playing with the Raiders right now. And Pete Carroll can see that. We can all see that if you have eyes. You don't need glasses like Scott and I are wearing today to see that Geno Smith is not playing well. And as you said, Scott, you're down. It's a blowout. The game's over.
Blowout.
Hang him up. You know, and his answer was, and this is on Monday, Geno Smith needs more practice. He just needs to feel the offense and get the feel of the offense and need more practice. That's what we said. That's why he left them out there. And to that I say, Geno Smith is not some 23, 24-year-old young quarterback. If this was Dylan Gabriel, if this was Drake May, if this was Caleb Williams, I would say, yeah, I understand. He's a young quarterback. He needs to get the feel of the offensive practice. Geno Smith is 34, 35 years old, Scott. He's been in the league for over a decade. We're past the point of he just needs practice. The point of you acquiring Geno Smith was the fact that you think you can get off to a fast start because he understands offenses and how they run. Yes, he never played under Chip Kelly. But how many times during the offseason did we hear, Scott, oh, he understands the offense. He understands Chip. He gets Chip Kelly's offense. It's something that he's played in before in a similar fashion. So the Raiders should get off to a quick start offensively. And that was part of the optimism I had for the Raiders offense is that you have this veteran quarterback. You have this proven play caller. It should get off the ground pretty quickly, even though they have a young offense. Now, again, I know they didn't have Brock Bowers out there, but with Brock Bowers out there, Geno Smith has been throwing interceptions. I know Brock Bowers is not himself at maybe 50% at best, but this is the exact opposite of what we expected out of Geno Smith. He has 9 interceptions. He's still on pace to throw for close to 30 interceptions for the season. And if you watch the game, he's throwing into double coverage.
All the time.
His interceptions, it seems as though, and someone pointed this out on Twitter, and I forgot who did. But someone said this, and it's so true. It seems like he wants to go to Jacoby Myers quite a bit. And teams are picking up on this, and they're getting a jump on a lot of his passes to Jacoby Myers. A lot of his interceptions were intended for Jacoby Myers.
Yep.
And for whatever reason, he isn't able to trick the safety or look off the cornerback as a veteran would and manipulate the defensive backs who are in coverage. He's unable to do that. And he's making, we said this 2 weeks ago, Scott, he's making a lot of the mistakes you would expect to see from a young quarterback. And there was no reason to leave him out. The Colts had pulled their starters by the fourth quarter. The Colts had pulled their start. The game was over. Put your backup quarterback in there. Get him some reps. Get him some practice in an offense. Yeah. He needs the reps. I know Kenny Pickett coming out was a older rookie quarterback, but Kenny Pickett is 27 years old, and he's a much younger quarterback than Geno Smith. He needs the practice. He needs the reps in Chip Kelly's offense.
Right. And it's just like anything in life. If you're doing something and it's not working, you gotta mix it up. And maybe you mix it up and you have the same result. I don't know. But how do you know until you try it, right? And so that's where I think, will the pressure get to Pete Carroll where he puts Kenny Pickett in the game? He did, after the Colts game, say he thought about it. I don't know if he was just tossing red meat to the reporters or not, but they're playing Tennessee, one of the worst teams in the league as well. But Cam Ward had a nice game. Cam Ward's starting to warm up a little bit. Okay. So to me, if Geno Smith goes out there and has another 2025 Geno Smith type game, and he doesn't go to Kenny Pickett this time, you know what's going to hit the fan, because you will expose yourself and you will reinforce what some of us think, which is Pete Carroll cannot get over his blind loyalty to his guy Geno Smith. So we'll see what happens against Tennessee. But it blows my mind. Again, I'm not saying you shouldn't have some patience with the Raiders overall, i.e. in them building up the roster and getting to a point where they can actually compete for the playoffs. But this stuff is completely different. So, that's where we're at. And it's this game against Tennessee, because then they got the Chiefs after that, and the Chiefs have started to play better. Now they lost, of course, to Jacksonville, one of the hottest teams in the NFL. But the Chiefs, you saw, and the Chiefs are still relentless. They go down to the wire as they did against the Jags. So
Now,
go ahead.
really quick, now that they're going to have Rasheed Rice back for that game because his 6 game suspension will be over,
Yep.
by the way.
Yep.
But go ahead.
Yep. So you have all that going on. So this game against the Titans, if they have any opportunity to start to turn the season in a more positive direction where you start to see some progress, it's going to be against the Titans. And if they don't, boy, some of the fans who are saying 1, 2 wins, you could be absolutely right. Okay, we're going to take our first break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Paul Kowarski, who covers the Tennessee Titans. He's going to tell us about the Titans and what the Raiders can expect. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast, also heard on the radio 1015 KDAWN and 840 KXNT in Las Vegas. Mo and Scott coming back right after these words. All right, it's time to make you some money. Money with Mo. Yes, it's time for Sleeper Picks. Of course, Sleeper Picks, sponsor here of our video all season long. If you don't have the Sleeper Picks app, what the heck are you doing? Go get it. You want to play daily fantasy football? No better place. I know a lot of you use Sleeper for fantasy football for your leagues and whatnot, but we talk about the picks here. And not only that, I got a new special offer for you. Yes, if you go get the Sleeper app right now, guess what? You download it, you go in, they're going to give you a free $20, $20 for nothing. No deposit, nothing. You go in, sign up, they're going to give you $20 to start. So you get to start for free. Try it for free in essence. It's like sampling at Costco, right? You go in, you get it for nothing. Then once you see how awesome it is, you deposit $100 and guess what? Because you're a listener or viewer of Silver and Black today, you get a $100 match on that deposit. Just use the code GENTY. That's GENTY. Okay, Mo, we're going to get into tonight's game, the Eagles and the Giants. Big NFC East, excuse me, I'll spit it out. NFC East rivalry. Of course, not as big with the Giants not being the Giants of old, but still always a big game. These two teams hate each other. The two fan bases hate each other. Philly, New York. That rivalry, of course, always a big one. Okay, Mo, give me your picks for today so our audience can make some money.
Okay, let's start out with Devonta Smith and his receiving yards.
Okay, let's go
Give
down and find.
me,
All right.
give me, what is it? Give me over 40
Over
receiving
40.
yards
Okay. Yeah, the
for
most
Devonta.
popular one's over 25, which is too easy.
Yeah.
And then the line, the big line that they have is 48.5 yards. So you're saying 40. I like that one. I think that's a good call there. So
Over
Mo's taking 40 plus yards for Devonta Smith. Why that one? Tell me.
Simply because the Giants, Paulson Adebo has been pretty good as their cornerback number one. It's their cornerback number two spot that's been problematic as an issue. It was actually a position battle over the summer. So they've been having issues with wide receiver twos. I do think
Mm,
AJ Brown will also go off, but I think people forget that Devonta Smith is also, in my opinion, he's also a number one wide receiver. It's just that he's overshadowed by AJ Brown and how great he can be.
absolutely.
So I take Devonta Smith on this one and his 40
All
yards.
right. Player number 2, who you got?
I'll go with a Saquon Barkley anytime touchdown. I
Yeah,
did the
that's
anytime touchdown last week with Kyron Williams. I believe he scored 2. He had a fumble also. But I believe he scored 2. We're going to go back to the anytime touchdown. Saquon Barkley, he's going to be scoring multiple touchdowns against the Giants until his career is over, right?
yes.
To as payback and revenge for them moving on from him. All you need is one anytime touchdown. That's it should be pretty simple.
Right. And especially since the last game, Saquon Barkley had a good game, of course, best running back in the league, but I feel like he's gonna go nuts today. So there you go, Saquon Barkley. All right, now give me your Giants pick.
Giants pick. Let me take a look at Jackson Dart's rushing yards.
All right, let's go to Jackson Dart, and we're going to rushing yards. Let's take a look. Here we go. Bum, bum, bum. Rushing yards, 40 and a half.
Ooh, 40 and a half. Okay, let's take a look at Scatterboo.
Okay, we're going out to my man from Arizona State, the Sun Devil, Cam Skatteboo. He has it's over it's one touchdown basically. But if we look at where we at?
His rushing yards. Just want to
Why is
see.
it's not giving us the rushing yards yet? Hmm. He's got Yeah, the only one they're offering right now, Mo, is 2+ anytime
2
TDs.
plus touchdowns.
Or
Wow.
just one, 0.5, so a half anytime TD at 2 times that's the odds, so to speak.
Since they're not giving me his rushing yards, if the rushing yards do pop up when you pull up the app, take Scadaboo's rushing yards. Philadelphia's run defense is not as good as people think. I know they have Jalen Carter, but
Yeah.
it is not as good as it was last year. So I'll take the anytime touchdown. So I'm going with a touchdown Devonta Smith ticket.
All right.
Saquon Barkley touchdown, Scadaboo touchdown, over 40 yards for Devonta Smith.
All right. So Devonta Smith, 40+ yards, as you mentioned. Saquon Barkley, anytime touchdown. Cam Scadaboo, anytime touchdown. And if you put $20 on these 3 players and you go with Mo's pick, and remember, if you go sign up for the Sleeper app right now, you're going to get $20 for free. So you could take the $20 and Mo's picks, excuse me, and you can make 75.80. That's a nice return, Mo, isn't it? I mean, geez, 55.80 on a $20 bet. I'll take that any day.
If you look at the way the Giants are playing right now, and I'm in New York, so it's easy for me to see, but they're pretty much now a running football team. I know
Yes.
Jackson Dart is garnering all the headlines, but they're taking the pressure off of his arm and they're running the football a ton. And that's why I look for Jackson Dart's rushing yards as well, because he's running the ball a lot. And anytime if you've studied the game long enough, you know you have a quarterback who can run the football, it makes it a lot easier for the running backs to get their rushing yards. So the Giants are going to come with that run game. As I said, the Philadelphia Eagles interior run defense is not as good as it was last year. I expect Scadaboo to get going. I expect Saquon Barkley to do his thing and score a touchdown. As I said, Devonta Smith getting those yards also because the Eagles had a meeting. AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts, Devonta Smith sat down and had a meeting about their passing game. So I expect Jalen Hurts to get the ball to his 2 receivers.
And I like the point you made about the Eagles defense up front. And I see the Giants, those long sustained drives when they get them and getting down in that red zone. And Cam Scadaboo, for those of us long in the tooth, he's an old school.
Yeah.
He just reminds me a lot of like John Riggins, right? Just gonna
Yeah.
power people. Not only that, but man, the kid can block too. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Which in the NFL, as a back of that size, you got to be able to block really, really well. And he does that. All right. So do this. Go get your free $20. Again, this is a limited time offer. $20 from Sleeper Picks just to sign up. I mean, they're paying you $20 to sign up. If you don't sign up, you're crazy. Then deposit $100 after you win that 55 on Mo's picks. Guess what? Deposit 100. We're going to match it. $100 deposit. So you're going to have $200 in that account to play daily fantasy football. You can also play other sports, by the way. Don't get me wrong. And use the code GENTY, as in Ashton Genty. Use the code GENTY for that $100 match on the deposit. Rules and regulations apply. Check out the Sleeper app or sleeper.com for details. It's not available in every state, but most likely it is in your state. So check it out. Again, the code is GENTY, $100 match on that first $100 deposit. Plus, sign up. Just sign up today. I'm telling you, sign up today, get $20 for free from our friends at Sleeper Picks. Welcome back. Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports Original Podcast. Also heard on the radio, 101.5 KDAWN and 840 KXNT in Las Vegas. Scott and Mo back with you. We're here to talk Tennessee Titans with a man who knows them very well. That's Mr. Paul Kuharsky, the Paul Kuharsky podcast. Also, paulkuharsky.com covers the Titans for a long time, veteran of ESPN and also of Sports Talk Radio. Paul, thanks for joining us to talk about this team. Of course, Brian Callahan, new head coach. Raider fans know him well from 2018. He was the quarterbacks coach in Oakland when the Raiders were still there as well. And I want to start off the conversation asking you about a guy Mo and I really like because, as you know, the Raiders have continually kicked the can down the road on getting a young quarterback. Several years ago, 3 years ago, Mo pointed out Cam Ward. He really liked Cam Ward. I like Cam Ward. He ends up in Tennessee, and we've seen him start now in Tennessee, 52% completion percentage there, but he doesn't have those baked in easy completions, if you will, the RPOs. When you look at the development of Cam Ward and what's happening there with Nick Holtz, the OC, what's going on there? What do they need to do to really make it a little easier so that Cam Ward can come along the way they need him to be the future franchise quarterback there in Tennessee?
Yeah, well, I think he's passing on some of the easier stuff. They've called him kind of a hunter. Jeff Fisher got a lot of attention in the press room back in the day. He said, never pass up one to get to another. And it was painfully conservative, but it was a different game back then also. Now we're seeing Ward do exactly that. He's passing up one to get to another. He's got more than his fair share of drops. His receivers aren't helping him out. It's not a great room of targets. But also he's going for harder stuff sometime. He's not been accurate enough. He's got footwork problems that come into play. And they talked to him really going into this fourth quarter in Arizona, coming out of halftime. Just get your eyes where they need to be. Let your feet follow your eyes, and stick to it. Stick to it. Don't get distracted. And part of that distraction, obviously, the number one distraction is a pass rush. Number two distraction is disguised defenses. But Arizona killed itself, and Cam Ward played a terrific fourth quarter, the best that we've seen from him. And the hope now is that he can pick up those things that he did in Arizona in the fourth quarter. And we know we're not going to see that all the time, but that we could see it more often.
So, Paul, you talked about some of Cam Ward's struggles. You talked about the Arizona Cardinals game. And first thing I want to say is, or ask is, so where is he excelling? What can he take from that Cardinals game specifically and carry it over? And the other thing is, he's the league leader in sacks taken at 19. Are a lot of those sacks on him because he's holding on to the football, or is the pass rush just getting to him because of that offensive line?
Well, he's excelling on the move. And on some broken plays, he's done some amazing thing. I think everybody remembers his first touchdown. They were at the 9-yard line. He ended up going all the way to the right sideline, throwing all the way back across to their fourth-round pick, Alec Iomanner. The ball was in the air over 40 yards from a 9-yard, quote-unquote 9-yard pass. Kind of throw that you're saying, oh, no, and then it's tremendous. And they put him more on the move in Arizona. The sacks, this offensive line has been bad for a long time. Bill Callahan was going to be the guru that fixed everything. They've got huge investments, paid huge money to Dan Moore, who's an average left tackle, but he's a lot better than the total crap left tackles that they've had the last couple of years. They invested first rounders in Peter Skoronski, a guard. He was 11th. J.C. Latham, 7th pick, who was going to be the left tackle and is now the right tackle, expecting him to reemerge this weekend after a hip strain. Took him down in the opener. They've played better the last 2 weeks. Yeah, they've let Cam down. And you're right. Cam also has contributed to this. He holds on to the ball too long while he's doing some of that hunting. Thinks he can make something happen, And some of the early numbers on how long he held the ball before he got sacked, the number was ridiculously high. So a combination of a lot of things going on. It's been better the last 2 weeks. And certainly Titans people are hoping that's a trend and not an aberration. Max Crosby will help us find out if that's the case or not.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. And you talk about this Titans team and kind of its competitiveness. And I know I read some of your coverage about stacking progress. When you look at this and some of the fourth down decision making been very conservative. I know that a lot of folks who cover the Titans have talked about that. What do you need to see this week to show that they're stacking? Because obviously the Raiders are coming in and they're reeling. They are in a state of dysfunction and in some cases, I think, delusion when it comes to Pete Carroll and understanding what's going on. But what do they need to do, the Titans, against this Raiders team to show you that they're starting to stack and they're starting to get to the competitiveness level that they need to be at?
Well, ideally win. I mean, they haven't won 2 games in a row for several years. Last year, they followed up each of their 3 wins with a loss. Those losses got progressively worse. So that was a bad thing. Raiders, are not a good team. Like the Titans are not a good team. It's 3rd game in a row for the Titans. Pete Carroll, I think, is an overmatch for Brian Callahan, who's got in his next 4 games, Pete Carroll, Mike Vrabel, who'll be coming back for blood to Nashville, I'm sure, and Jim Harbaugh. Those are tough guys to match up against. But if not a win, you got to see some Cam Ward progress and see more of that fourth quarter than you see more of the first three quarters, where he completed 38% in Arizona. So, this team needs to win more than 3 games, which is what it did last year when it got the number 1 pick in the draft. And it needs to show progress with its number 1 overall draft pick. And so if he just drops back to what he was doing before that magical fourth quarter, then that looks like an aberration. But if that looks like, hey, he hit something new and can now draw out of some of those things, not throw 100 miles an hour to a guy that's not far away from him. Yes, everybody should catch everything, but there are times where, certain throws are called for and there are times they're not. And he can help guys out with more catchable passes, not just in terms of the heat on them, but in terms of ball placement, which was much better in the fourth quarter. And a lot of guys where in other situations, he's not putting the ball in the great spot and the guy can't necessarily take advantage of the space in front of him. Developments like that, and play calling developments now from Bo Hardigree, another guy you guys are familiar with, who, got them in a better rhythm during these 3 drives that let them take over in Arizona. So if they don't win it, at least, compete. They've gotten blown out a good share this year, non-competitive. Not true. Competitive at the beginning of the fourth quarter, then completely out of it. So extend the game into the fourth quarter and show us some of these things that you've gotten better at. Don't regress in terms of pass rush, despite Ross Crosby. Don't regress in terms of putting some pressure on the quarterback yourself. Go get Geno Smith, and let's see some better quarterback play continue.
So you mentioned briefly about the drops from his pass catches not helping Cam Ward. In your opinion, do you think the Titans did enough in the offseason to support Cam Ward as far as his pass catching group is concerned? Has anyone separated themselves as the go-to target for him? I know they drafted a couple of wide receivers, Gunnar Helm at tight end. They brought in some veteran wide receivers. Who is the guy in the receiving game? If it's not Calvin Ridley, who's battling injury, had a good game last week, but let's be honest, his numbers pretty modest throughout the first month.
Yeah, well, it is Calvin Ridley. It took him till week 7 last year to get going with Will Levis, and he still had 1,000-yard season. Took him till week 5 this year. Just started horribly, dropped things, looked like it really got in his head. It's why he's not a clear-cut number 1 by any means, despite the fact that he runs good routes and has great speed. And last year we put half of it on Levis because Levis was wild and didn't have good timing with him. Ridley had great camp with Ward, and they had things down right from the beginning. And we were like, all right, well, we're going to see Ridley and Ward from the beginning. And then for a month, Ridley was dropping stuff, having all kinds of trouble. So, I mean, they don't have a true number 1. They need to get a big time guy, but Ridley's that for them. Elik Iomanor did not have a good game in this last game, but he's very promising 4th rounder out of Stanford, who really was Stanford's main guy. He's got to learn to use his physicality, which he has a little bit better, to fight people off, but has been promising. Their target core is not good, but it's better than it's been, and it's not good. And they just have so many needs. The roster's not good. So, I mean, they couldn't address everything last season. They signed Moore as left tackle, I mentioned. Now, he was going to get good money from somebody because he's a starting caliber left tackle, but he's not a great left tackle by any means. That's the state of left tackles in the league, right? But already they need a premier. They don't have any edges worth a damn. They need a premier edge. They need a premier wide receiver. L'Jarius Sneed is up and down, but iffy health-wise. They need a premier corner, So ideally, they still get a high draft pick. They've got their quarterback. They trade out. They stock up, and they can finally get to a place where in 2027, they have manageable needs that they could address in 1 year. last year coming into this Cam Ward draft, I said, this needs to be the last draft, last offseason where we say it's more than they can do in 1 year. And it's not. Next year is more than they can do in 1 year. So 2 years away, they have to be able to handle everything in 1 year. That's how bad the roster is.
So, all right, Paul. Defense. So we look at the Titans defense now. The Raiders are coming in and they're going to be playing the Titans. And you have Geno Smith, who has been Santa Claus with the football to defenses in the NFL so far this year. 9 interceptions, of course. But the Raiders do have some weapons on offense, including Ashton Genty, the rookie running back, who I think appears to be everything we thought he could be on this offense that fails to get going a lot of times. Looks like they'll be without Brock Bowers yet again. What does this Titans defense need to do to shut that down and to give themselves and Cam Ward, as you said, on the offense, the opportunity to be in good field position and to be in good position to score against this Raiders defense?
Well, Jeffrey Simmons is a singular force. I mean, he is the best player on this roster by far. It's hard to name the second guy. He's playing as well as he's ever played, and he looks like a different guy probably since the last time you saw him because he's down like 25 pounds. So he's not a hefty defensive tackle anymore. He's moving tremendously well. He's wreaking havoc in the middle. So he's the chief run stopper, and he's the chief pass rusher, really. The Titans have a variety of interior defensive guys playing next to him who are holding up pretty well. Tavondre Sweat has been out due to come off IR, I think maybe next week. But the edges, Draymond Jones recovered a fumble last week. This is the first time we've mentioned his name. Jihad Ward is showing a little bit. Arden Key, you guys know him a little bit. Flashes occasionally, but also doesn't set the edge very well in the run game. Femi Aladejo, their second-round pick, is a real project who just does not show much. So pass rush-wise, I mean, Geno's going to have some time. Titans have guys in the secondary capable of taking the ball away. Their safeties are a pretty good group. Amani Hooker, Xavier Woods, Quandre Diggs. Good players. Not a lot of speed back there. And the Titans' second corner is a problem. L'Jarius Sneed, is making mistakes, but he's a veteran corner who knows what he's doing and can make plays. Second corner, Jalen Armour Davis, they're talking about how he's needed to settle into games. Well, hey, we'll spot you a 14-0 lead, and then he'll settle in and play reasonably well. You can't survive on that. I know they're concentrating on that, but he's number 18. I would expect that the Raiders would be targeting him early and making him show that he can play from the beginning of a game.
Nice. All right. Paul Kuharsky, paulkuharsky.com. You can also follow him on X at Paul Kuharsky NFL. Paul, we appreciate you giving insight into the Titans.
Enjoyed it, guys. Looking forward to getting out there. I've not been to Allegiant yet. I always like a new stadium, and they say the new Nissan Stadium, has the same builders and is going to have some Allegiant quality. So I'm looking forward to getting in there and walking around.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that real quick too. That's all on schedule, looking as promised.
Yeah, 2027. And look, we all like outdoor football, but in Nashville, Tennessee, if anywhere, it makes sense, not because of the weather, but because of year-round entertainment. That venue is going to have stuff going on all the time. And you're going to see college football national championships, WrestleMania, Final Four, and Taylor Swift, all playing there. So in that regard, it makes total sense.
All right. Well, all three meet there. Will be front row for Taylor Swift. No, I'm just kidding. All right, Paul. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Take care, guys. Thanks.
All right. There you go. Paul Kuharsky. Great insight there into the Titans. We're going to take a break. We'll be back next with more of your calls on Silver and Black today. Work boots used to be a choice. You either got durability and the freaking things killed your feet, or you got something that was comfortable and guess what? They fell apart. But my friends at Brunt, 3, 2, 1. Work boots used to be a choice. You got comfort and the things fell apart, or you got durability and the things would just absolutely kill your feet. But guess what? My friends at Brunt called BS on that. They built boots that are both tough, comfortable, and they don't even need break-in period. That's right. I'm going to show you my boots here from Brunt. I mean, let me tell you something. These are the most comfortable boot I have ever worn. And not only that, no break-in period. That's what's amazing about them. They felt broken in. They don't just feel good, they perform as well. I've worn these working around the garage, working on some wood products. They are waterproofed. They have a safety toe. You pull on, you can get lace ups as well. You can check out brunt.com for all the stuff there. But whatever your job calls for, including being a radio podcast host, they have the boots for it and they back them up. If you don't like them, you can send them back. You wear them to work. If they're not right, just send them right back to Brunt. Of course, right now, Silver and Black today is giving you an opportunity to get $10 off. That's right, $10 off. Go to bruntworkwear.com, Bo knows. That's Bo knows at checkout. And for the time, our listeners get that $10 off at Brunt when you use the code Bo knows. I'm telling you, folks, I got to show you this boot again, just because it's so freaking comfortable. In fact, it's way too big for my wife, but she put them on. She's like, "You're doing these spots for Brunt. What are they?" She put them on. She's like, "Wow, those are comfortable." So guess what? I'm ordering a pair for my wife, and I'm going to use the code Bo knows to get $10 off because I'm thrifty that way. But anyway, check out bruntworkwear.com. And as you know, if you get a comfortable pair of boots, I know got a lot of people out there, a lot of working folks who watch the show, get Brunt shoes and boots. They are going to change your life. Again, use the code Bo knows, get $10 off. Bruntworkwear.com. Brunt Workwear is a sponsor of Silver and Black today. Welcome back, home stretch. Here's segment number 3 of Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports Original podcast, also heard on the radio, 101.5 KDAWN, 840 KXNT. Don't forget, make sure you subscribe wherever you get your audio. Also, if you're watching us on video, hit subscribe, thumbs up, and the notifications bell. Moton, Skockle, Branson, back with you. It's time for you to speak up. As you can imagine, Mo, Raider Nation has a lot to say. We've been getting a lot of calls, so we want to get to as many as we can in the time we have left. So we're going to do that. Some good callers. Some new callers, some regular callers calling in with some of their. I challenge the listeners to call in and tell me what they believe to be the way forward, because we can sit here and lament where the Raiders are. We can bitch, complain, and criticize, which we will all do, of course. But what's the path forward? So hopefully we got some of those calls as well today. All right, we're going to start out with our good buddy up in Chicago, and that is Tarek. Here's Tarek.
Good morning, Scott and Mo. This is Tarek checking in with you guys from the Windy City. This is my time for my weekly Raiders therapy session with us sitting at 1-4. Where do you begin, you guys? I mean, let's start with our quarterback. I'm just going to start calling him Geno Smith.
Oh,
League leading 9 interceptions. He looks absolutely atrocious. He's in his own head. His confidence is completely shot. I agree with you, Scott, that they should have put in Kenny Pickett. For Pete Carroll to suggest that they're still practicing reps when there's a blowout loss instead of getting Kenny Pickett some action when he hasn't seen the field and is probably still learning the playbook is ridiculous. But Pete Carroll, I mean, a national champion, a Super Bowl champion, possibly a Hall of Famer. It's been a complete disaster. Potato Chip Kelly just coming off a national title. He's the highest paid offensive coordinator in the NFL. He looks like he's completely lost and that he needs to be back in the collegiate ranks. And John Spicek appears to be hiding under a desk. Like, make a statement, say something, show us your face. Even though, again, in fairness, you can't expect him to get everything done in 1 year with regards to the draft, regards to free agency, et cetera. But, I mean, there's just no quick fix here, guys. There's no fix this season. Like, what do you do to turn this season around with 12 games left to go? We have minimal talent on the roster. We have no depth. We have a lot of young, inexperienced players. Our defensive backfield is absolutely terrible, and I'm sick about anybody bringing up Isaiah Polamau. The guy's absolute garbage. I don't care. Nobody can convince me otherwise. Offense, defense, special teams, we're just playing deplorable football. I'm hearing whispers of locker room dissension between players and certain coaches. And I agree with you, Scott, enough of even bringing up AOC. And I will also admit, Scott, that it is insane for me to even bring up the name Shedeur Sanders. It's not going to happen because now Flacco's now with the Bengals and Shedeur moves up to number 2. But when you're so freaking desperate for anything resembling some hope or some glimmer or some fresh blood in the locker room, then when you're so desperate, then sometimes you're picking at straws, and that's just a crazy thing that came to my mind when I saw that image. I'm looking forward to your guys' show this week. I don't think this season is salvageable, even though we have 12 games. My buddy Yandog, he went from 11 wins to now he's predicting 2-15. Scott, you predicted 4 wins, I believe. I'm going to go lower and go 3. I don't know if we beat the Titans, who are just coming off a win at the Cardinals. So it'll be interesting to see how this continues to evolve. I think it continues to go in the wrong direction, and we'll see what kind of changes are made, if any, this season. But looking forward to your guys' show. Have a great week. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
All right, there's our buddy Tarek, who was texting me, Mo, about Shedeur Sanders. And every time somebody brings up Shedeur Sanders, I'm like, so now Flacco got traded, as he mentioned. But my thought was, and this is where I challenge Raider Nation, so your solution to the problem with the Raiders right now is to go get the third-string quarterback of the Browns. Now, you know me, Mo. I loved watching Shedeur Sanders. I like Shedeur Sanders. I think developmentally he could be a good quarterback. I still believe that. But that's not going to solve your problems. Now, you have Kenny Pickett on the roster. You traded for Kenny Pickett for this reason. In case something happened to Geno Smith, I know at first thought it was, well, if Geno Smith gets injured. Geno Smith is injured mentally. He's not playing well. Quarterback in the NFL who doesn't turn the ball over. So I don't think going to find a quarterback is the solution. By the way, only solution to the quarterback issue is to draft a young quarterback. I don't know how many times I got to say it. Second, I want to get your thoughts on what Tarek said about Chip Kelly. I watched the film, Mo, and tell me if you disagree. I don't think Chip Kelly's necessarily doing a bad job. Are they doing a poor job of executing? Do they have the talent to run the offense he wants to run? I don't think so. So I'm not saying he doesn't deserve some criticism. That's not what I'm saying. But to me, Chip Kelly's not as bad as the fans are making it out to be.
In any game, you can nitpick what a play design decision, play call on 3rd and 2, 4th down, 2nd down, whatever the case may be. The main problem here is Geno Smith is not seeing the field, and he's throwing in the double coverage. I said it during the early segment. Geno Smith is not seeing the field, and he's telegraphing a lot of his throws. Chip Kelly is not throwing these interceptions. Chip Kelly doesn't have 9 interceptions. And I'm not absolving Chip Kelly and saying he's done no wrong.
Not perfect
but
either.
The biggest problem, though, let's not lose sight of the issue. In our business, they call it don't bury the lead. Geno Smith is the biggest problem here.
Absolutely.
You can have Kyle Shanahan calling the plays. You can have Sean McVay calling the plays. If Geno Smith is throwing in double coverage, you can't salvage that, right? So I think when Tarek talks about Shedeur Sanders and anyone talks about a young quarterback, I think what Raider fans are starting to realize now is that for the people who had them at 10, 11 wins, they're not going to the playoffs. They're not getting close to the playoffs. So you might as well start developing players. And I had a video up on Bleacher Report this week, put it up on Wednesday, and I said the Raiders need to start prioritizing development. Of course, people are going to say, does that mean you're waving the white flag on the season? Absolutely not. People use the word tank, but if you know you're not close, and Pete Carroll said this on Monday, these are Pete Carroll's words, not mine. We thought this all along, Scott. You and I were here all along. Pete Carroll just arrived at this conclusion that, this rebuild that the Raiders want to do is going to take longer than he expected.
Right.
So if Pete Carroll is admitting that this turnaround is going to take longer than expected, you better start developing young players, because these players that are 30 or close to it or in the last year of their deals aren't going to be there to turn it around. Those young players that are on rookie deals, the rookies that are on your roster that John Spivak drafted, those guys are going to be around unless you cut them early. But it's time to start developing your young talent, because this is not a one-year fix. We've said it all along. Pete Carroll is just coming to this conclusion. So what does that mean? Okay, not to say that wins don't matter. You still want to win football games. But the youth on your roster is going to drive this turnaround, not the guys who are on one-year deals and are 30 years old and headed to free agency in 2026. It's the young guys that are going to drive this. They need to play football. Darian Porter needs to play football. Their 2 offensive linemen they drafted in the 3rd round, Caleb Rogers and Charles Grant, have played 0 offensive snaps. They just started to get Jack Besh into the fold. Took them long enough. But these young guys need to get on the field and play football.
Absolutely. And you made all great points there. And listen, I had people saying, because I was complaining about Geno Smith still being in the game, and people were saying, well, why isn't Ashton Genty in there? It's like, well, when you have to pass the ball because you're so far behind,
Yeah.
and especially the running back shelf life is 5 years in the NFL. If you can save the guy abuse, you save him abuse. Now, if you would have put him in on some pass plays, because again, first drive of the game, Mo, back to the summer, I was saying Ashton Genty wheel route, right? He's really good in doing that. They did it on the first drive and then they didn't do it again. Now, again, this Chip Kelly hate, whatever you want to call it, not hate's not a good word. The disappointment with Chip Kelly, again, he's not absolved of all mistakes, but you can't execute when your quarterback is giving the ball up. And by the way, I'm still looking for the exact stat, but out of my own count, which is not scientific, Geno Smith's interceptions have mostly come in a clean pocket. To your point about throwing in double coverage, it's not pressure and he's throwing the ball out and he misses the guy and it's intercepted. So again, let's be cognizant and I'm not again absolving the offensive line too of their issues as well. All right, let's get out to Big Hot. That's some nickname. Big Hot out in Boston.
Hey guys, it's Big Hot from Boston. Yeah, my comment is, we always talk about how you can't give like a quarterback a fair evaluation if they have a bad O-line, or a running back a fair evaluation if they have a bad O-line. I think it's honestly, I know a lot of heat is on Chip Kelly and the play calling, but I don't know. I think he hasn't had a fair chance with all of the poor decisions Geno Smith is making. And I wonder if we really had a good opportunity here to have a fair evaluation of Chip Kelly, given that, 9 critical takeaways, momentum killers in the game, and he, can't get the offense rolling or get a script going. Just your thoughts on that. Thanks, guys.
Boy, Big Hot coming in hot. We just made this point with Tarek's call, right? Which is, it's hard to evaluate that. And he made the point about quarterbacks, running backs, because we talked about early in the season, Genty, and people were criticizing him already, and Ryan Clark saying he doesn't have it, all that kind of stuff, which turned out, of course, not to be true. But it's hard when you have a coach who's trying to scheme up an offense and your quarterback keeps giving the ball away.
There's no other way around it, Scott. When your quarterback is turning the ball over at the rate Geno Smith is turning it over, Scott, he's averaging nearly 2 interceptions a game. And if he's turning the ball over that, what can Chip Kelly do? You want Chip Kelly to run? Not you, Big Hot, because we nailed exactly what you said on the call. We're on the same page with this. What do you want Chip Kelly to do? Run on the field and tell Geno Smith where to throw the football? I mean, it's getting to that point where you got to hold. It's sad to say, but does someone have to hold Geno Smith's hand on this and be more directive on where the football should go and where not to throw it, and go back to teaching the basics? Treat him like you would treat a rookie, because that would be ridiculous. Why did you give up a draft pick, a third-round draft pick, and pay him all his money? Remember when Geno Smith had that off-season not altercation, but verbal spat with someone at his camp, and he said, that's why they pay me the big bucks. That's why they pay me the big bucks.
Yep.
They don't pay you the big bucks to turn the ball over, buddy. Simply put, the Raiders need better quarterbacking. And you can blame Chip Kelly all you want. You can blame the play calling all you want. You could say they need to pare it down. They need to just focus on dink and dunk. That is not what they brought Geno Smith here for. They brought Geno Smith to Las Vegas to make better decisions, get the ball downfield on occasion, and help develop the young wide receivers they have on the roster, right? And that is not happening. And it starts with Geno Smith. And he's gotten up to the podium and said, I had to play better. But at some point, we've heard it. We've heard it week after week. Now you have to do it on the field, and it hasn't been done yet. We haven't seen good Geno Smith since week 1 of the season, Scott.
Right. And he's going to make around $37-40 million this year. He's on pace to earn $1 million per interception at his current pace, which is just brutal. I mean, I don't need to belabor the point. All right. Let's go out to Tar Heel Tom, our buddy down in North Carolina.
Scott, Mo, this is Tar Heel Tom. I called earlier, but I got the memo from Scott himself. Come with concerns and come with a plan on what the Raiders should do moving forward. So that's what I'm going to do. I feel like the quarterback position, this is karma. This is karma for literally getting rid of Derek Carr and not having a plan. Getting rid of Derek Carr was the right move. Not having a plan was not the right move. And at this point, you're not winning football games. Like Geno Smith had really one good game, and that was week 1. And the offense has been pretty much nothing since then. You know, we could talk about the offensive line, we could talk about, you know, the run game, whatever. But the case is, you don't have the guy under center that can be a legitimate signal caller. The turnovers are abysmal. If you're going to keep turning the ball over, you're going to keep keeping your defense on the field, and that's going to wear them down. So at this point, like, get over your ego, Pete Carroll. Get over, you know, these are our guys. No, you need to win football games. At this point, you put Kenny Pickett in the game. If you want to start Geno Smith against the Titans, great. He throws one interception, you get him out, and you start Kenny Pickett. You do. You have to. He doesn't turn the ball over, and you need to find ways to win football games. As for the draft class, for guys that aren't active, make them active. Make them play. See what you have in these guys and develop. You're going to hit a crossroads. You can't run the toe line of we want to win, but we need to rebuild. You need to pick a lane. You just stick with it. And this organization has never rebuilt the proper way. And I do think that if you start losing more games, trading Max Crosby is on the table this trade deadline. It just is. You have to see the writing on the wall there. But you know what? You play Kenny Pickett. You start some of these guys that were in this draft class that haven't been playing much. Get Jack Bech way more involved than he is. And same with those O-linemen. And just see what you have. Anyways, go Raiders.
There you go, Tar Heel Tom. Mo, I go back to last season in the preseason. You and I had our good friend Brian Balding, or Baldy, on. And Baldy, we were talking about that time, the quarterback situation, Minshew, AOC. And Baldy said the most simple statement, but the truest and most important statement in the NFL. And that was, you got to have the quarterback, right? You got to have the quarterback. And as Tom just said, they haven't had a plan. What they are doing and what they've done for 6 years, and that includes even when Derek Carr was there and not having a plan for who was coming after Derek Carr, is they have taken duct tape, super glue, Elmer's glue, rubber cement, whatever it is, to try to patch this team together, especially at the quarterback position. A lot of folks reached out to me this week, Mo, said, well, this quarterback class isn't as good as the quarterback class in 2027. So what? And you say it constantly on the show, Mo. I want to give you credit. You draft a quarterback in the first round. And if he doesn't work out, next year, you draft a quarterback in the first round. You keep doing it until you get the guy. To me, he's absolutely right. This is a call that absolutely nailed it. You are not building the correct way, and it's got to start. Yes, you need the trenches to win in the NFL. You'll never get an argument against that from me, but you got to get the quarterback.
Scott, and I said this on Twitter, and I'll say it on the show too. Why is it that, and you can answer, viewers and listeners can answer this question for themselves. I'm sure that there are different answers for this, but why is it that the Raiders get quarterbacks and even players and coaches that had some sort of success elsewhere or productive careers elsewhere to get to the Raiders, and that you get the Raiders get the worst version of these players, right? So Jimmy Garoppolo, right? They get Jimmy Garoppolo. He's playing in the Super Bowl in San Francisco. I know the answer to this question, but he gets to the Raiders. He's the worst version of himself. Gardner Minshew, though he's been a borderline starter backup his whole career, worst version of himself with the Raiders, right? You get Geno Smith. He just had 2 Pro Bowl years in Seattle. Led Seattle to a double-digit win season before he got to the Raiders. Now we're watching Geno Smith, worst version of himself. Pete Carroll as a head coach so far, worst version of himself. And it happens over and over again. And this is what happened. And this is why people say Mark Davis is chasing, other people's legacies and other people's resumes. I get it because they've had success elsewhere. So you want that success for the Raiders and you're hoping they can bring some of that over. But for whatever reason, quarterbacks, players. I remember Corey Littleton was one of the best cover linebackers with the Los Angeles Rams.
Yes.
Worst version.
And I was high on
Worst version of himself with the Raiders. Why is that, Scott? Why is it that coaches and players are productive elsewhere? You plug them into the Raiders, locker room, system, sideline, worst version of themselves. It's an organization. It pains me to say this as a Raider fan, but it's an organizational issue, Scott. It's an organizational issue that starts at the top.
I was just going to make that point. You and I, before we went on the air, we were talking about the Bengals trading for Joe Flacco and just kind of what a joke that is, because he's actually worse than Jake Browning, the guy he's replacing. And I talked to you about being in the Cincinnati area. I talked about how bad the organization is. And this is and again, I want to say this clearly. Mark Davis, when I was in Las Vegas, was always good to me. Every time I talked to him, when we had opportunities, I like him as a guy. I think he did the right thing, moving the team and doing all that stuff. But organizationally, this franchise continues to be garbage. And listen, yes, John Spytek deserves some time, but he's not off to a good start. Now you can say, hey, we haven't evaluated his draft picks, but the coaching staff has. The coaching staff that he was involved in selecting has, because they're picking guys to play. Their draft picks aren't even on the active roster, the 2 offensive linemen you mentioned earlier. Okay. So John Spytek, and listen, for those of you saying we can't one and done again, I understand that. But this is what happens when the fish is rotten from the head down. Okay. Is you can't get right because you organizationally are weak. And I told people on my last show, Mo, that I talk to people, even though we don't come on here, we're not breaking news, we're not beat writers, all that stuff. That doesn't mean that I don't talk to people in the organization. I developed over the last 8 years, and especially when I was in Las Vegas, developed a lot of relationships inside the building. And I had one guy tell me from inside the building this week, there's no vision, there's no feeling of family or togetherness in the building. Now, this person doesn't work on the field, okay? He's not a coach, he's not a player, he's not a trainer, none of that stuff. But when somebody tells you that, that's a problem. And if you don't have cohesiveness, I don't care what kind of organization you are. If you're a restaurant and the busboys and the cooks and the servers and the custodian, if they're not all on the same page and understand what the vision is, you're not going anywhere. And I think that's what we're seeing again. And I didn't expect that. I said the adults in the room thing. I did. And I was wrong because it doesn't look like they are. So we'll have to see what happens. But it's certainly, you're absolutely right. It goes back to organizational prowess, and they just haven't had any. All right. Let's go now to Raider Tone. Raider Tone.
Morning, guys. Hey, Mo. Hope you're feeling better. This is Antonio from Modesto, or a.k.a. Raider Tone. Lifelong fan, 55 years. Hey, first of all, looking forward to this season. I know you try to think outside the box a little bit. So, first of all, at the beginning of the season, I had mentioned months ago about trading Max for the dude in Cincinnati. Oh, my God, I forgot his name. He's hurt right now. But I would have traded the house for him. I would have gave Max. I would have gave Michael Mayer and gave a number 1 pick for him. But obviously, Joe Burrow, my bad. He's hurt now. So that being said, I said that earlier this season. My moving forward is, I think this is going to be bad. I don't know how much more bad it can get. But I would go for Shadur. I know he's on Cleveland. I know Cleveland's terrible. I know he's his 3rd-round pick. But maybe deflect some of the attention on how bad the show is in Las Vegas and see what Shadur could do. Shadur, I'm messing his name up. Deion's son. Get him on there. You probably get him for literally nothing. I don't know what something really cheap. Put him at probably like game 10 in the season. See what he does. Who knows? Maybe there's a miracle out there we can watch. But as far as the organization, I mean, like the Red Sox lost for 100 years. The Cubs lost for 100 years. The Lions have lost for 70 years. The Chargers have 0 Super Bowls. I've waited the Bears haven't won Super Bowl in 44 years. The Raiders are going on 45 years, I believe, this year, somewhere around there. I'm gonna stick it out. I as much as I hate to give up a Sunday, like this last Sunday, and sit through and looking for something that might catch my attention. I'll continue to do this as a lifelong Raider to the grave. Hey Mo, I hope you get better, man. I'm sorry that you got an accident.
Oh, he's thinking of
you do a
Murph.
great show. I look forward to it. It's bleak right now. It's silver and bleak, not silver and black. You guys take care. Bye.
Oh, Tone, I might steal that one. Silver and bleak is a good one. And it was Murph, of course, from Raiders Fan Radio, who's on our postgame show, that was in the accident, not Mo. Thank goodness. We don't want any more people in accidents. But Tone, thanks for the call there. But again, it's first of all, Joe Burrow's not going anywhere unless Joe Burrow asks for a trade. And Mo, if Joe Burrow said, I'm done with this Bengals organization because it's terrible, Joe Burrow's not going to go to the Raiders. He wouldn't want to go to the Raiders. He's at the point where he wants to go to a team that has an offensive line that's going to immediately challenge for a Super Bowl title. So I get your thought. I don't blame you for wanting Joe Burrow. Don't get me wrong. And then the Shedeur Sanders again. The Raiders could have taken Shedeur Sanders, Mo, if they really loved him and liked him and thought he could be an answer or a developmental opportunity for them. They would have taken him.
They had 5 opportunities to take him because he went in the 5th. Well, more than 5 because John Spitz traded him multiple times in the 2nd round. So they had close to 10 times of drafting Shedeur Sanders. It's clear that Shedeur Sanders wasn't on their radar. But again, I get the sentiment about developing a young quarterback. This goes back to Tarek's call that Raiders fans are realizing that this team is going nowhere this year as far as the playoffs are concerned. So why not turn this into just a developmental year?
Yeah.
Don't live in denial and still believe the Raiders can run the table. Sorry, Murph. Sorry to burst your bubble. The Raiders are not going to run the table and make the playoffs, win the Super Bowl this year, unfortunately. But let's get back into the reality space and understand where the Raiders are, and that's far from being a playoff team.
Right.
So what do teams that are far from the playoff mark do? They start developing young players. We talked about this with multiple callers. I talked about this again on Bleacher Report, that it's not waving the white flag. It's building for the future. Here's the problem, though, with building for the future. This is where age comes into question. And again, I haven't talked about Pete Carroll's age as far as why the team is failing. It's rigidity, not age. You can have a 70-year-old person be up on tech and be willing to change and be flexible. Pete Carroll's inflexibility is the problem. But here's where age could be an issue for a rebuild. He is 74 years old. Let's be honest here. Does a 74-year-old head coach want to start a long rebuild when he knows maybe he may have 2 to 3 years in this profession? Unless he thinks next year they're going to rapidly turn it around and it could happen, Pete Carroll's not going to sit there and go, yeah, let's roll out a 3-year rebuild plan at 74 years old. That's just not the reality for an older head coach. An older head coach is going to want to win. And Pete Carroll, this may be his last stop as far as being a head coach. He's not going to want to go out as a big loser. He wants to win football games. So how patient would Pete Carroll be with the rebuild if the Raiders go in a developmental direction is the question.
Yeah, and the difference is you look at all of the other times that, because when people refer to Pete Carroll rebuilding USC, and then, of course, rebuilding the Seattle Seahawks, Pete Carroll had a lot more organizational control at those stops. He ran those organizations. People forget that. He doesn't have that with the Raiders. He's a coach. Now, does he have more influence? Absolutely, i.e. Geno Smith and all these other guys that he's signing that used to play for him in Seattle. But it's not the same situation. So it's apples to oranges. And then you got to wonder if he continues down this track, if Geno Smith has another clunker against Tennessee and he starts him against Kansas City and he has a clunker against Kansas City, Pete Carroll might end up being one and done, because you can't continue to double down on bad decisions and think you're going to get better results. All right, let's go to Florida and our buddy Johnny.
Scott and Mo, Johnny here, Florida via California. Once again, the Raiders dropped to a new all-time low. You cannot tell me that performance, they didn't quit out there. And once again, I get off work today and they release the best linebacker on the team. It's obvious, man. Pete Carroll has to go. This whole coaching staff has to go. Spike Tick has to go. Until we get people that know how to run an NFL team and a coach that knows how to coach, we're going to be going through the same thing as before. When are we ever going to fix the problem? You need to have good trenches. You need to have good young talent. And we got none of that. We got a few spots here and there, Bowers, Genty, but that's a small issue of this team. The whole issue is we got the worst talent in the NFL on the Raiders. The secondary is trash. The defensive line is trash. They need to just rebuild and tear it all down and rebuild from scratch. But it's not with this organization or let me say it's not with this coaching staff that we got, because they don't know how to evaluate talent, and that's just clear as day. Special teams is trash, and Pete Carroll is not fixing none of it. So until we get better leaders leading the organization, you're only as good as the top people in your organization. And we're not there, and I don't see us getting there anytime soon. Tell me if I'm wrong. Let me know.
There you go. Johnny in Florida. He gets it. He gets it. He mentioned Jermaine Pratt. I want to bring that up and get your thoughts, Mo, because Jermaine Pratt, I had some people there's some grumblings that he was negative influence in their locker room. So two things there. One is they weren't happy with his performance in Cincinnati, so they let him go. But there was never any thought, and I checked with people here in Cincinnati, there was never any issues with Jermaine Pratt in the locker room in Cincinnati. And they had a bad year last year. So when things go bad, usually people who are bad characters grumble. He did not do that last year. Didn't have any issues with him there. He gets to Vegas. He was their biggest signing from a linebacker perspective. They bring him in on a 1-year deal and does pretty well. And then suddenly Indianapolis doesn't make the trip, and Pete Carroll says, we just decided to move on. To me, that speaks to the dysfunction. So if a guy that you went out, and yeah, I think it was like $5 million, whatever it was, you went out and signed because you thought this guy can be at least the short-term answer for us in a position that we were void in. And then he's gone. Of course, you had the Amari Cooper thing, and you had other players that were quickly in and out. Mo, I don't know what's going on, but again, you don't bring in players that you're going to count on, and then suddenly from one week to the next, they're not traveling, and then you cut them because you thought, well, it's just we decided to move on.
So I'm not going to speculate on what happened.
Yeah, we can't.
Right? Because people are bringing up the video where Jermaine Pratt was yelling at a younger teammate when he was in Cincinnati when they lost the playoff game. I believe the young player missed an assignment. And they go to that and say, well, he criticized that teammate. Why, he probably did that in the later Raiders locker room. I'm not going to say that because I wasn't there. I don't know what the issue was, right? What I do know, though, Scott, is something smells fishy with this Raiders locker room cohesive unit. Let's just go down the timeline, right? We go through the offseason. Amari Cooper retires within, a week? He wasn't even a Raider for a week. It wasn't even a full week, I don't think. Right? So people say, oh, yeah, he was just out of shape. Amari Cooper's just out of shape. He found out he was washed, and he walked away from the team. All right. We go into the season, and there's a clear issue with JPJ. For what the issue is, we don't know per se. Chip Kelly had a very X's and O's type answer. Doesn't, we like Jordan Meredith because he makes the calls to line of scrimmage, all that stuff. We get that. But it's clear that Pete Carroll and JPJ don't quite jive, right? Because he's hesitant to praise JPJ, and JPJ not being in competition for the center position to me doesn't make sense. So there's the JPJ stuff. What's going on with JPJ and the coaching staff? Then we just mentioned Jermaine Pratt gets released. We don't know what happened there. The other thing too is, Scott, and I don't know if a lot of people picked up on this, but Adam Schefter had a post last week, and it said the Raiders were playing Brock Bowers through a PCL injury. This is coming from Adam Schefter, that Brock Bowers had a PCL injury, but he was pushing to play, and the Raiders let him play. I'm paraphrasing it, but basically the responsibility was put on the player and not the team. And someone made this comment that it's lame for Adam Schefter, not Adam Schefter, but for the team to put that out there to Adam Schefter that it's Brock Bowers' fault why he was out there playing. You and I both know, Scott, the team makes these decisions.
Right.
We hear this all the time. The team sometimes has to save the player from the player. Hey, you're going to sit. You have a PCL injury. You have a knee injury. We need you. You're too important for you to risk. You need to sit down for a couple of weeks. We hear it all the time. Teams have to save players from themselves. The 49ers talked about doing it with Christian McCaffrey after his injuries. How is it that, because we know that these insiders get their information from the team.
Mm-hmm.
So for the Raiders to put out there that it's Brock Bowers' fault, we tried to tell him to sit, but he wanted to play, so we can't tell him no. Where is the organization? Where is the hierarchy? Where is the chain of command? Brock Bowers is a player. You're running the football team. You tell Brock Bowers, hey, you're going to sit down. And they ran him into the ground and didn't get better. His knee didn't respond. Pete Carroll got up there and said, we're expecting Brock Bowers to play. Remember, Scott, they sat him for practice, didn't practice the last 2 weeks, and said, we still expect him to play. Come Saturday, Friday, whatever the case was, Brock Bowers' knee didn't respond. He's not playing against Indianapolis.
Yeah.
You want to talk about organizational malpractice? This is why I said it's an organizational failure.
Yes.
You can fire coaches, you can bring in new GMs, you can bring in players, you can sign this guy, you can sign that guy. We had the Christian Wilkins incident in the locker room that may have been on him. But continuously, the Raiders have these locker room issues. They have there's friction between coaches and players. They're putting out statements, putting the onus on the player and not the team for sitting arguably your best football player in Brock Bowers, was an all-pro rookie last year. How is that not on the responsibility of the team and you're putting that on the player? It's
right.
ridiculous.
dysfunction. Dysfunction. That's the definition of dysfunction. So those arguing that there's no dysfunction, it's laid to bear. It's not like we're guessing and we're assuming there is. You can see it. There is proof. And you just pointed it out perfectly there. It makes little sense. And all of that is really, really troubling. And this is why I think you saw Max Crosby after the game in the scrum. And Max is always honest with people when he talks to reporters. And he just kept saying, we didn't do very good. I got to watch the tape. He reminded me of Marshawn Lynch. I just got to watch the tape. I got to watch the tape because he was done. He didn't want to even talk. And it was after week 4. Holy moly. All right. There we go. Johnny, thanks for the call. All right. Now we're going back out to the left coast. Josh in California.
Hey, Scott Mo. This is Josh from the Central Valley in California. Want to apologize. The last time I called, I was on my earbuds and I was doing yard work. I was frustrated watching the Raiders game. Last time I commented that Geno Smith I was dead wrong about him. He's playing just as bad, if not worse, than Jamarcus Russell at this point. I mean, it's horrendous. The guy is staring down the single receiver and not even reading the coverages, leaving the guys wide open across the field. It's just bad overall. I'm going to say I truly think we should just blow it up. I think we should, just because we got a mediocre team that's trying to win, but then not in the right mindset to win. Does that make any sense? We have to really, really think about if we want this to be in shape like Pete's team, right? Which is a true 3-4 cover 3 or a sky quote unquote coverage team, or do we, keep the players that we have, right, and try to fit that mold? I hate seeing Max Crosby dropping the coverage. I mean, we're running a 3-4 base team, but we have 4-3 players. I don't understand it whatsoever. And I can't stand that Pete Carroll is just being a grumpy old man and not making the switch for Geno and Kenny Pickett and not trying to adapt his system or adapt to his players. I just want to know what you guys think. What's the mindset for the season? Where do we go from here? Where's the positivity Where's the positivity? Just kidding, guys. I know we're horrible, but you guys have a blessed day. All right, bye.
You too, Josh. Thank you so much for that. We appreciate it. And Mo, it's sort of like as he was talking about tearing it down, I don't care if you're talking about an old house you buy or if you have maybe an older car. You know, you bring your car into the mechanic and the mechanic says, hey, listen, you got to have about $2,000 worth of work done. And you say, well, I'm not ready to spend that yet. Well, we can patch it up for a little bit, but eventually you kind of gotta do this work or the car is going to go down permanently. And so you keep patching it. And then the thing goes out. And I think at this point, the one thing the Raiders can't be concerned with is Pete Carroll's timeline. You mentioned it, 74, 3-year deal. I don't care if Pete Carroll's around to see this team. You got to say, hey, Pete, it's not working. We're tearing this thing down to the studs and we're rebuilding it and we're doing it the right way. Okay. Because we're not here to fulfill your ego so that you get one more championship run in you. That's not what we're here for. We brought you in to do a job to right the ship here, to get it on a good foundation. Like Moses took the Israelites out of Egypt. He didn't get to go to the promised land, and Pete Carroll's not going to either.
I said this on social media, and I'll say it, and you heard me say it today. You can fire all the head coaches. You can bring in another head coach. You can bring in more players. You can make a big free agent signing. You can do all of that stuff. But people like to say, trust the process, right, Scott?
Yeah.
The Raiders need to fix the process.
There you go.
Because it's clearly flawed. You've brought in Josh McDaniels. Antonio Pierce has a bit of a, promising half season where he cleans up Josh McDaniels' mess. That didn't work out. You fired Tom Telesco. He's out of the door. Dave Ziegler was out of the door with Josh McDaniels. You can bring in all of these coaches and GMs and front office people. The Raiders need to find a plan. Come together with a GM and a head coach. Have a plan and stick to the plan.
Yep.
Whatever that plan is, stick to the plan because you can't build. First of all, you can't build anything if you keep tearing it down. It's clear this isn't working. And I say that because it seems to be a disconnect between front office and head coach.
Yes.
Right? When Pete Carroll first came in, he said, we're going to win while we rebuild. But what did John Spytek do? Traded out multiple times, brought in 11 draft picks, and had an influx of young players on the roster. What is Pete Carroll not doing? We've been talking about this today. It's been the biggest theme. Not playing the young players that John Spytek drafted. So you can blame John Spytek and say, oh, his draft class sucks. But as I said, he's got two third-round picks who have played 0 offensive snaps. How do we know the draft class sucks if they haven't been on the field? We can't even evaluate these guys because Pete Carroll and his coaching staff won't play them.
Right.
So you can say, oh, John Spytek is not in. He doesn't know how to evaluate talent. But how can you evaluate talent if they're not even playing?
Right.
I mean, there's nothing to evaluate.
And Mo, that's where I think that's why when people are like, oh, Spytek's awful. Look, we don't know that yet.
We don't know.
I'm not giving him a free pass, but I'm just going on logic. To your point, John Spytek's plan might be the right one. He might have the chess moves to do the right things here, but the GM doesn't go down to the coach before the game and say, hey, you got to put Grant in. No.
Right.
He gives them a roster and he's hands off. He's hands off with the day-to-day coaching of the team. So this all lies with the coaching staff right now. No question. I agree with you.
What I will say really quick, Scott, is you can criticize John Spytek for not spending enough in free agency, right? As I said, if you're going to have a young roster,
signing the right players,
you can get away with having a young roster if you have the free agents to play right away and the young guys to learn behind them. The Raiders decided to go young with an influx of talent and then go cheap in free agency. That's why I blame John Spytek. But I can't say that his draft class is trash because the coaching staff would rather bring in Stone Forsythe, who's been awful with the Seattle Seahawks and knows Pete Carroll, than play Charles Grant. So that's not a John Spytek issue. That's a coaching roster personnel management issue.
Right. Now, if things continue to slide downhill, then I could see some pressure coming from the GM to say, hey, Pete, right? Because technically the GM is the boss of the coach, right? That's the guy.
Time works.
I could see John Spytek starting to edge his nose into the business of the coaching, because if he's like, look, it's not working. I got you these guys, these young guys. We got to see what they got, Pete. You got to put them out there. If they go out and they're terrible, I own that. But we got to see what they got. So I think we are accelerating towards perhaps an intervention by the GM. Doesn't have to be the owner. You know, in the past, Mark Davis met with the coach. Mark Davis needs to stay out of it. It needs to be John Spytek. He needs to be the guy. So we'll see what happens there. All right. Thanks for the call. We appreciate it. Now we're going out to Austin, Texas, and Fran.
Scott, Mo, this is Fran out of Austin, Texas. Been a Raider fan for 38 years. I've been listening to you guys for a while now. Thanks for all you do. Really appreciate you. You guys are like Raider Nation's therapist in a way. A few questions real quick. Number one, if the Raiders fire Pete Carroll after this year, who would you guys see as being a good replacement for him? I mean, I was with Mo last year. He said Liam Coen. I wanted Liam Coen, and look what he's doing now. The Jags are 4-1, and they're playing at a high level. Now, he has a better roster, but you get the point. The second question is, I'm really starting to lose my wits end. I'm diehard silver and black, but, man, it's been rough. If you guys had to pick a more stable organization to root for, what would be like a natural transition for a Raider fan to leave and root for another NFL team? Would it be the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Ooh.
Like, I don't know. I'm thinking about leaving, man, and just leaving Raider Nation. Anyway, thanks for all you guys do. Appreciate you.
It's like my wife's family in Cuba. They want to defect. That's how bad it's gotten for this poor guy. 38 years. See, it was easy for me to give up on my team back in 2014, the Chargers, because they moved, right? So I was done. I'm a San Diego guy. I grew up in San Diego. So, but stable organizations, though, when you start to think, and I'm not telling you to switch teams, Fran, because I don't think you should. But nonetheless, you look at Pittsburgh, you look at Baltimore, right? You look at the Bills. I know the Bills have a painful history because they just can't get over the hump all the time. But you look at as much as it pains me to say it, because I know how Raider fans feel, the 49ers, some of these organizations have stability, and they might have a down year here and there, but they never fully go. They don't go to 2 to 3 wins. They go from being a playoff team to just missing the playoffs. And then a year or two later, they're back in the hunt for a conference championship. Those types of organizations go back to what you've been highlighting throughout the show, Mr. Moton, which is you have to have a plan. You have to have organizational knowledge, stability, and an organization that runs without that dysfunction.
Fran, I think this is a show first where we had a fan actually ask us, hey, where should I defect, guys?
Yeah.
I'm tired
Where should
of
I
this.
go?
Where should I go? I'm going to be an orphan fan. No,
I'd say the Edmonton Eskimos, Canadian Football League. You get the Rouge in there. You get the 55-yard line.
I kid you not, though. There are a lot of, I know some people just say it because they're upset in the moment, but there are a lot of fans out there who say, I can't deal with this anymore.
Yeah.
They may not say they're going to defect, but they just say, I'm not going to watch the rest of the season. Now, we want you to, of course, watch and listen to us. And we don't want you to leave Raider Nation. But in an alternative universe, right? Let's just say in an alternative universe, right? If you're going to be a fan of a stable organization, the Eagles, I love the way Howie Roseman does business.
Oh,
even
big time.
All his trades don't work out. I think the Raiders got the better of the Thomas Booker trade because Jacory Bennett is not even playing right now. But he's willing to take swings, and they continuously draft quarterbacks. As I've been saying, that they don't have to draft one early because they got Jalen Hurts now. But when they had Carson Wentz, what did they do? They drafted Jalen Hurts in the 2nd round.
Yeah.
Carson Wentz was the number 2 overall pick in his draft class. They drafted Jalen Hurts in the 2nd round. They're continuously drafting and developing. You mentioned the Ravens. I know they're not playing well right now. They have a rash of injuries on both sides of the ball. but a very stable organization that's also very aggressive. That's the reason they brought in some of the players that they brought in, some of the big names, and they've won a lot. Now they still have had the Super Bowl elude them while Lamar Jackson is there, but this is a team that's won a ton. So all I'll say is that you're hoping that the Raiders can take bits and pieces from these successful organizations and implement it themselves. They're trying to do that because they got a front office guy from the Philadelphia Eagles, right? They went and plucked somebody from the Eagles front office, and they're trying to emulate that, but it still goes back to what I said to the previous call, is that there is a disconnect between the front office and the coaching staff, and it seems to have been that way. Just look at the history really quick, Scott. John Gruden and Reggie McKenzie, that relationship dissolved within a year, right? They bring in Mike Mayock. Love Mike Mayock, but he wasn't an experienced GM. He worked with John Gruden. Antonio Pierce and Tom Telesco. Antonio Pierce seems to be alluding that there was a disconnect there where he wanted this and he wanted that. He wanted Josh Jacobs back. He wanted a quarterback. Didn't happen. Now we're seeing John Spytek draft all of these players, again, an 11-player rookie draft class, and Pete Carroll and his staff refuses to play them. To me, that shows a disconnect between front office and coaching staff. So the Raiders have to get their front office and coaching staff on the same page before they get back on the right track.
Right. And I think when and if the Raiders make a coaching change, could be next year, it could be 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is, I believe it's got to be John Spytek who makes the choice.
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I understand it happened for a little bit. It was kind of in vogue, and then it went quickly out of vogue, hiring the GM and the coach together. No. Let the GM hire the coach. So whatever happens next, Mark Davis needs to be hands-off. I know he's got to approve it, but he's got to be hands-off and let John Spytek pick the next coach. Names, I don't know. I haven't even thought about that yet, right?
Clint Kubiak.
Kubiak, yeah.
Clint Kubiak.
Yeah, good selection. But we'll talk about that as the year goes on, especially if it continues the way it is. We're going to need things to talk about because we're not going to be able to talk about any good football. But we'll get there as well. All right, we're going to close out the show getting a word here from Anthony out in the capital of California, Sacramento.
Hey, what's going on, Scott and Mo? This is Anthony out of Sacramento, California. Called in a few times, but yeah, after watching this Monday night game and I decided to call, and the Sunday obviously against the Colts was just horrendous to watch. It's almost bad to even talk about it at this point. Like a lot of your questions or just a lot of your concerns or comments, on the live show, Scott, it's just really puzzling as to why Pete is so stuck on Geno going that whole game. Pickett could have did. I don't know. He could have did something, maybe not. But at this point, at this time, it's like we're seeing the AFC West still seeing. It's early in the season, but everything looks to still be for grabs, right? With the Chargers sitting at 3-2, everybody else 2-3, or the Chiefs 2-3, and then the Broncos 3-2. But who would have thought? The Raiders sitting here at 1-4. We probably had them a little bit higher through the first 5 weeks of the season. But man, I don't know, just put my mind out and just thinking and just like, what's next? Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here at this point? Very frustrating to watch, very frustrating to see. And just, I guess we're going to keep going, moving forward, and hopefully we can get some great building blocks for the upcoming season, I guess. All right, guys, you have a good one. Bye.
All right, Anthony in Sacramento, thanks for the call, man. We appreciate that. And Mo, here's the thing I want to point out. Could Pete Carroll be one and done? I absolutely think he could. If he continues down this path and it doesn't change over the next 12 weeks, 13 weeks technically, then I could see that happening. And it reminds me of my time in the corporate world. Different companies I worked at, you have a leader come in. Leader comes in because they're turning around a division or the company. Let's say they're a CEO, CMO, whatever position they're in. It's a leadership thing. So a leader comes in, and a leader what do they know? They know what they've done in the past to be successful. They have a system, they have a pattern, and it's worked. It's completely worked. So, and that includes bringing people with them they know can execute their plan, their vision. Okay. They do that. So what happens? They go from one company to the next company, to the next company, to the next company, and it works. Then at some point, the best of us are not as good at 74 as we were at 44. It's just fact. I don't care what kind of business. I know there's outliers to that. So that's how I look at Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll at 74 thinks he can reproduce everything else he's done in other spots, is why he mentioned USC and, of course, Seattle in his press conference with the slow start, saying that that's what happened in other places. So he just expects the same thing to happen. The problem is you're not in the same situation. You don't have the same talent. The times have changed too. I'm not going to ever rail on somebody because of their age, because I'm getting older too. So I get it. But Mo, to me, that's part of the issue here is, and if that leader, i.e. Pete Carroll, doesn't come to the realization that you can't do things today like you did in 2010, then he's got to go.
Where is our resident organizational builder, Anders? This would be the perfect show for Anders, because he would be able to diagnose all of this organizationally. We're talking about all the organizational issues with the Raiders. He'd be perfect for the show. Wish you had called in Anders. No, I think there's a possibility Pete Carroll is one and done if he realizes that this rebuild is going to take longer than he's willing to coach, right? Yeah. So let's say he says, in his mind, he feels like, I want to coach 2 more years, but this rebuild is going to take 3 or 4 more years. That's where I can see him coming to realization saying, I'm just going to hand this over to someone younger now, because I want to see it through, and I'm not going to be able to see it through. Now, hopefully that is not the mindset, because I want to see the Raiders turn it around quickly. I want to see the Raiders win now.
Absolutely.
You and I both thought that they were going to be better than what they are now, and they're not going to be even close to 8 wins. Someone just posted this on Twitter. The Raiders have to go 500 the rest of the way just to get to 7 wins. Just to get to 7 wins. I'm not a mathematician, but just to get to 7 wins. They got to go 6-6 the rest of the way just to get to 7, which was my prediction. So Pete Carroll, understanding now that this is going to take longer than expected, I'm wondering, how does he pivot? Now, we're saying they just have to develop, and that's the way to go if you're a losing football team, right? But what does Pete Carroll think? You know, where does he think his timeline is? I know the Raiders can't base what they want to do off of just Pete Carroll's timeline, because they know he was on the short one. But does Pete Carroll stick it out and say, I want to be here to, through this rebuild? Or does Pete Carroll say, I'm just going to hand it off now, because the mindset that I have is win now, and we're not ready to do that yet?
Yeah.
So I want to see now. Of course, it's 1-4, a lot of season left. But as the season goes on, I think we're going to start to see what the Raiders' plan is. Do they trade Max Crosby? Do they trade Jacoby Myers? Do they start playing some young guys? I think that'll give you a hint of what's coming up next.
Absolutely. Well done. Appreciate it, Anthony. Calling again, brother. We appreciate your thoughts, and always good, I think, discussion starters. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this show. Mo, let everybody know. We're sitting here on Thursday. Let everybody know what you got coming up.
So I have a Sportsnaut Raiders article coming out. Rookies that need to see more snaps. I think that's been a big theme today. Talked about our trio of rookies that should be not only getting more snaps, but starting right now with the Raiders' issues on both sides of the ball. As I talked about earlier in the show, Bleacher Report VODs, short segments are up. I talked about why the Raiders should fire Tom McMahon. I know we didn't talk about that today, but I said this on last Sunday. The Raiders have the worst special teams unit in the league. You're seeing punt returns for a field goal, long kick returns, some of them called back, but still long kick returns, block punts, block field goals. Tom McMahon has to go. I talked about that on Bleacher Report, and I also talked about players that the Raiders need to develop for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and this, I think they move on from Tom McMahon at the bye. So we'll see. Remember, we talked about that last week, Mo, about when they make changes. Usually it's going to come at the bye. So you got 2 more weeks. So the special teams has 2 more weeks to make some miraculous recovery for him to, I think, retain his job. But we'll see if we're correct about that. All right. There you go. Okay. So do us a favor. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your audio. Also, if you're watching us on video, thanks with us. A good little extra long show today, which if you're watching us at night and the game is on, but that's cool. I'm glad you watching us as you watch the football game. But make sure you call in to 702-900-7869. 702-900-7869 is the number. Mo, buddy, enjoy another Raider game on Sunday. And we will talk to you on Tuesday.
Take care, Scott. Take care, Raider Nation.
All right. For our producer, Mike Rabier at Odyssey, and for our producer on the radio, Mr. Mark Bonilla, and for Moton, I'm Scott Branson. This has been Silver and Black Today. We'll talk to you guys next time. Have a great one. All right.